Hey, what's up, guys? It's me, Fred Fishman, and today I'm going to talk about how, so far from what I've gathered, this is how you make a successful guild in a game like Rise of Kingdoms, Call of Dragons, Lords Mobile, you name it. I found this to be far too frequently a real problem, but it's a lot easier than a lot of people make it. So, what you do, if you're wanting to start a guild, you start it out, and you gotta have a group of friends. I don't care if you call your mother, your sister, your brother, or your friend next door and the two buddies near you, but you need at least 2 to 3 people, maybe 4 to get this started. And what you want to do is you want to probably start out making a Discord. I am not even kidding when I say this, but I really feel like every guild I've ever seen benefits by having a Discord. Because the first thing you do is you command and conquer by getting communication started. That's ultimately the best and most advantageous thing you can do. Because the more people out there that know what's up and already know what to do, when to do it, is going to make you a lot more of an advantageous player versus player guild or a PvE guild. I mean, really any guild that I have ever heard of ever. They all have to have the coordination to be able to get people from point A to point B. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but that's easy enough. Tell me how to make a Discord then. Tell me how to do this. I'm not going to tell you how to make a Discord, nor am I going to tell you how to get people into a Discord. But what I can tell you is that you need to establish a method of communication right from the get-go, so that every single member that has ever joined your guild, regardless of whether you allow the floodgates open, or not, you need to be able to get that ball rolling somehow. Okay, whatever that line of communication may be. The second thing is you need to have a chain of command, meaning that you need to have yourself as a leader of the guild, you need to be somewhat active. Every guild that I know of often models its superiors to determine where to go and what to do. And if there isn't a very clear chain of command and a very clear mission or goal, then generally speaking, you're going to have disarray. So, if you want my 2 cents and you're trying to lead a guild, I think really ultimately it comes down to it comprises to about 3 things really, which is that you need to have a very clear form of communication between your officers, and those people need to be people that you can rely on and you will hopefully know that will carry out your mission. And that mission you need to know right from the get-go. What is this guild going to be able to do and what is it setting out to do? If your guild is setting out to, say, get that behemoth and get control of an area, then you need to kind of scope out what exactly do you expect to have in control of, and then how are you going to go about acquiring it. That is effectively a mission plan, and you need to be able to communicate that mission plan to all the other officers. And it is their job, along with you, to achieve that goal. And then as you acquire that goal, you need to set out more goals, which is not that complicated. But it's surprising me how some guilds are in complete disarray for this reason, because they don't have very clear objectives. I think about the third thing that really makes any sense is obviously as you recruit members, right, and you're going to bring in people of all walks of life, you're going to have all sorts of individuals coming from all different language barriers and vice versa. The nice thing about translation is that you don't necessarily need to be strictly English, strictly Spanish, and so on. Obviously, people will cater to those that speak the same language, generally speaking. I've just come to realize that that's just kind of the way things go. Like if a bunch of people speak English, chances are it's mostly going to be an English-dominated guild. Same goes for Spanish or any other language. It just generally people like to group it in the same form in which they can understand. I mean, it's really just a matter of how easily can you communicate. That's really what it comes down to. If it comes easily, then it'll be just fine. Now, I would say about all you need to do from that point forward, right? And at least in a game like this, right? You need to be able to establish territory. So very early on, you can see that they do kind of a cross X is what they did, but as you can tell that kind of has its own set of problems. which is to say that if you recruit a great number of players, but don't make it clear where people need to be, then you're going to have disarray. Now, as you might imagine, there's a lot of people up here, but there's a lot of people over here. Why is that? Well, it's because at one point in time, people were collected up here for the bear event, and then a lot of their activity died, and you have to be able to kind of cut them out as you go along. And the way that most guilds, at least in the beginning, the way they handle this is they'll let the floodgates open. They'll bring as many people as they possibly can. Then once they get to a sustainable number of activity, which is to say that, out of a guild of like say 100 people, you need to have about 20% of that, meaning 20 or so people active at any given time. And if you don't, you filter out the ones that aren't active or too low level or not progressing fast enough. Either way, you have to have some kind of restriction somewhere at some point. And as you go through and filter through these people, then you've also got to be able to be responsible for ensuring that once you've gotten yourself affiliated with that, you need to respond to problems within the guild as they come along. Because fights and more than likely decorum is going to be precedented by the people that lead the guild. So ultimately, if, say one member starts attacking other alliances or one member starts treading on other territories that they shouldn't be doing, and so on and so forth, it's like if you don't make clear rules of engagement and very clear rules of what is expected of every guild member, people will make up the rules and go along with what they know works. And so you have to be very, very clear with these things right from the get-go. This is why when you're setting up a guild in this game, it's very seldom that people will just go, okay, everybody attack the behemoth. You don't see that. You actually see what I would describe as a form of very articulate military planning, which is to say that they basically every behemoth battle ever, or any kind of major fight that I've seen in this game, is you collectively tell everybody, okay, everybody to this location by UTC X. Okay, you give them a few hours notice, you wait for everyone to arrive. Everyone arrives, okay, infantry goes here, range goes here, magic goes here. And, alright, infantry procs it, infantry hits it, magic and archery jump on top of it, rinse, repeat until the thing's dead. And obviously, you could also point out right from the get-go, how did I say this and then go, oh, well, hold up. You also need to double check that everyone's ready. Ready check. Okay, so you ready check everybody before you attack. Oh, yeah, before you even get in the damn thing, you might want to establish that nobody should hit the behemoth. If they do, they get kicked. Why? Because people that hit the behemoth are trolling. I don't care what anyone says. You're either new to the game or you're trolling. It's one of the two. Most of the time it's trolling. Because one person can get 6 or 7 other people killed in a behemoth raid. All because they hit it and procced it and aggroed it. And anybody in here knows this, feel free to tell me your stories in the comment section below, because I'm sure it's happened. And it's no fun to be that guy on the other end. It is never a fun experience. It's just one of those things that it happens. And when it does, you feel like you got yanked, and it sucks. But it does happen. Now, I would like to point out that if you're confused or lost so far in my suggestions in running a guild, and you're not a guild lead, and you're just somebody that's listening, I appreciate you. But the thing is if you're interested in building in a successful group of people and you want to manage them, the next step in every guild that I've ever known is you also need to have clear protections. And in a game like this, protections are a big deal because that's territory. Okay, you need to have a very clear objective of what you're going to acquire, but also a means by which to defend it. And so that requires either having a capacity or the near capacity to have players that spend. And these type of games, like it or not, the people who are ultimately successful are those who spend money. Those that don't intend to follow or gravitate to the people that do. And if you don't have enough players in your guild to spend, and you're not spending yourself, it is very, very easily going to be taken over by its opponent. Because you will find yourself on the receiving end of another guild that wants what you have. And if that does happen, I generally speaking say your guild or alliance might die from the very beginning onset of it in part because your goals were unrealistically going to be met with friction that you couldn't even sustain. So you have to be realistic in obtaining these goals. It's just like running any particular organization of people. You have to be realistic in what you know you can achieve, and simultaneously know that you can defend what it is that you plan to achieve. If you don't set out these goals and be able to meet them and make a gamble, that's fine, but it's just be prepared to lose. But also, it's not the end of the world, right? A lot of alliances in the early game concede and let go, which is to say that what a lot of alliances do, even in an early game, will actually go so far as to just relinquish control to another guild or alliance and merge. And there's nothing wrong with merging, really. It's just that whether or not the management of that alliance is ultimately going to dictate whether that's an actual wise decision or one that could present an even future crisis down the road. Yeah, it's like it's not entirely uncommon for people to go, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea," then find out little ways into it that may have not been a good idea, because you find yourself on the receiving end of strife and issues within other guildmates and other problems that arise from that. So I would say, just in general, if you're going to go about building a guild in this game, those are a couple of things that I think just stand out to me right from the get-go. Obviously, you want to have your alliance constantly building roads, building towers, getting alliance mines and ore production set up. You want to have a very clear objective and to what you're going to conquer and what you're going to take and take care of. And then I would say about the rest of it really is, once you've got your communication established, you've got your alliance already kind of built up. From that point forward, it's just a matter of really just setting out to achieve things as a group. And that's, I think, really, about all there is to it, really. It's just that seldom do people really think about it in the long game, because after a certain period of time, those things tend to dwindle, which is to say the people that you put in charge may tend to lose activity. You have to be able to replace those duties, and you've got to be able to keep that flow running smoothly. You can't have disruptions in it. It's like if one person decides to up and quit, you got to be able to replace them, and you've got to be able to get people in the places where they need to be. But you also have to have a very clear chain of command too. It's like, who's to deal with one thing or another, who is responsible of one thing or another. These are all things that ultimately save time, but also just kind of prevent a lot of unnecessary headaches that can come forward with running any kind of guild and any kind of game, really. Because a lot of what I said is really primarily information that I've really come to learn from running as many guilds as I have. I've ran a lot of guilds in my span of time, and I've always found that, at least in all of the guilds that I've ever run, they all, really strictly speaking, kind of build themselves on friendships, but also there's a methodical, almost business-like structure to a lot of them. I very seldom have I come across state level or even like fully operatable state level type infrastructure within guilds. Like, I've never seen a group of people organized in similar fashion. It's not that it can't be done, it's just that very seldom do people wake up every morning and go, I'm going to do this regardless of whether I have a life or not. I'm going to do this one thing and only one thing, and regardless if I'm there or not, it's punishment by death. It's like very, very few people are going to go to that level of what I would describe as just a methodical level of devotion to something. It's just not going to happen. So you have to be realistic with other people's time zones, and also being somewhat reasonable to people's time too, because just like anything, this is a game. It's not supposed to be a goddamn meat simulator where you're working and turning this into a complete job by any means. But it can feel like that, especially for people that run larger and larger guilds. Because the more and more people you have, the more and more time you need, and the more and more people you're going to need to manage it. And that can get tiresome. It's like it very well easily can get out of hand very quickly. Now, a lot of guilds I've seen will even find themselves under mismanagement, where people that they put in charge inevitably end up either taking members away or causing friction in places that they didn't need to make it. These are all things you have to be kind of aware of, and if you have to dice around it, you have to dice around it. But these are things that are really important, and ultimately you don't want to be on the receiving end, but it does happen. All the same, though, that is pretty much all I can give you as far as advice goes in building any functional guild, and again, like Call of Dragons. If you have any tips, though, feel free to let people know in the comments section below, and I'll see you guys next time.